Today, we're going to be making the biggest meth lab possible inside of Schedule 1. This can be built in the barn or the docks, as long as it's a 10-employee property. But I like the lab aesthetic in the docks, so we're going to build it here. Now, for this build, all you're going to need is everything that I have in my inventory right now, which is 14 chemistry stations, 14 lab ovens, 7 brick presses, and 7 safes. You're also going to need a single large storage rack. Alright, to kick off this build, we're going to start off by placing our lab ovens first. This will set us up for our pattern here. Now we're going to be using these beams as our starting point to guide us, and we're going to be lining up the front tile of the lab oven to the tiles that this beam is on. Then 2 tiles opposite to the lab ovens, we can place 2 chemistry stations. Now we have this perfect little area for a single chemist to work in. We're then going to repeat this pattern 4 times so that we have 4 of these little areas all in a row. So another section and another section until we come to this beam on the opposite side, and again we have these all in a row perfectly aligned with this beam. Now what we're going to do next is use this middle row here as our new guiding point. So we're going to start 2 tiles away from it and also 1 tile backwards. Then we're going to repeat our previous pattern and it should look like this. So again, we're going to work off of the back of these and make 2 more of these work areas for our chemists. So we now have the row of 4 and this row of 3. So it should look like this when you're all done. We now have 7 separate areas for each of our chemists to work in by themselves. Now for the next part here, we're going to give each of these areas its own brick press and its own safe. And it's not totally necessary to have this many. You could just do 1 brick press for every 2 areas and then give one of the areas its own. So I'm going to put 1 brick press and 1 safe for each of these 3 areas in the front, and it'll look like that. And then we'll head over to the back and I'm going to repeat the pattern. I place the brick press on the side with the lab ovens and the safe directly opposite to it. So that's what it should look like when you're all done. 7 separate workstations, each with their own brick press and safe. And again, this isn't totally necessary, but it will also allow for the longest AFK time from this property. Next, we need to assign destinations for all of our workstations here, as well as assign all of our item filtering. So starting with our large storage rack here, what I'm going to do is assign one of these cells to be acid, phosphorus, and pseudo. I'm then going to click Apply to Siblings, and that will change all of the other cells to match. But now we need to take the first 3 cells and assign each of them to 1 ingredient by itself. So we'll assign 1 to acid, phosphorus, and pseudo. Now these 3 cells will always be open for the correct ingredient, and the remaining 5 cells will be used for any incoming deliveries to hold over until the next set. I'm balancing it this way because we're only using 1 loading bay to accept deliveries from both trucks. Now moving into the stations themselves here. All you have to do is assign each chemistry station the recipe for liquid meth, and then assign its destination into the lab oven directly across from it. And we're going to do this for every single set of chemistry stations and lab ovens. We'll then grab the 2 lab ovens in this area and direct them into the brick press. The brick press can then be directed into the safe. Now that's the assignment portion all done. So we can move on to the item filtering in our chemistry stations. In each one of these, you'll have to assign 1 slot for acid, 1 slot for phosphorus, as well as a slot for pseudo. But also remember, pseudo has the 3 different variants for the different qualities. So you could either assign this to a single type of pseudo that you always intend to use, or you could assign 3 different qualities and it will run with whichever ones you order for delivery. So that's the only example I'm doing. You need to go ahead and assign every one of these work areas the exact same way that we just did the first one. Now we can go ahead and get started with our employee assignments. And we'll start off with the chemist because this one will be the most straightforward and in a repeating pattern just like those assignments before. So we'll grab a chemist and assign him to one of these work areas. Now all we're going to do is just repeat this pattern yet again so that every chemist has their own area with minimal walking distance. And just so you guys know, I have all of the chemist lockers up on one side of the stairs and all of the worker lockers on the other side of the stairs. So you can go ahead and get each of your chemists assigned to their work area, and then we'll get started on the handlers. And unfortunately, this part isn't quite as straightforward as the chemist, but two of them are very similar. We're going to take our first handler and assign them to take all 5 of their routes from this large storage rack. Now I'll slow this part down so that everybody can follow along, but we're going to come over to the right side of the room and assign the first 2 routes to this first work area, both chemistry stations, and then we'll go to the back of the room and do the same with the next 2 chemistry stations. Then we'll come into the back center of the room and assign 1 of the chemistry stations in this work area. Finally, we'll give her 2 brick presses, which will be in the back of the room, and 1 of the brick presses in the front of the room. Now we can take our second handler, and very similar to the first one, we're going to assign all 5 of her routes to take from this large storage rack. But this time, we're going to head straight to the back of the room. We're going to give her 1 assignment to this chemistry station because we already assigned the other, and then we're going to assign her these other 2 groups of work areas in the back left. So that's just going to be this one right here and this one in the corner. Then she's also going to get the same assignments with the brick presses, being 2 brick presses in the back of the room and 1 brick press in the front of the room. So we can head on over there, give her that brick press, and she's all done. Conveniently, we have 1 more handler and 1 more brick press. So we're going to go ahead and assign this final guy to this first brick press here. And the reason being is because it's the closest to this shelf and the door. We're then going to give him 4 assignments to take from the large storage shelf and bring them to the 2 work areas that are closest to the door. So that means this one here and this one right in the center. So once you finish up those assignments, there's only one thing left to do, and that's right, it's bringing everything in from loading dock number 2 into the large storage rack. Now we can go ahead and get everybody paid so that they can start bringing everything in for us, but this is going to take a while because it's only 1 stack at a time coming in from the trucks, and each station holds 30 ingredients each, so I like to go ahead and just help them unload these first 2 trucks because you'll need 2 of each just to fill everything up. But after that's all done, we can go ahead and get everything started and check out how this build is running. Also, I just want to say, after that first fill up, don't worry about the handlers being able to bring everything in on their own. When a chemistry lab is full of ingredients, it has enough supply to run for 3 days without restocking. And 3 days is plenty of time for that guy to bring everything in and for everything to be dispersed. In a full time lapse of this setup, you can see that the handlers actually always finish dispersing all of the ingredients and then go back to idle by the time that the chemists have to come back in. Now, a few things in regards to the build itself. As you can see, we've achieved pretty good synchronicity between all of the chemists, although you might notice a couple of outliers. This is very hard to avoid because they all idle in slightly different locations, and every time that you reload the game, they could move. Each of these chemists will fall into their own sort of 24-hour cycle, and on average, you'll be producing the maximum possible 21 bricks per day, which you can only do if you have 14 ovens and 14 labs. I will say it might work even more efficiently in the barn than in the docks, but as I said at the beginning of the video, I just like the aesthetic here more, and I think the barn should be used for growing plants. Also, I want to say, on topic of deliveries, when you order a delivery here, you're always going to order in sets of 70. That means 70 phosphorus, 70 pseudo, 70 acid. This will ensure that everything is always perfectly balanced, and you'll only have to order a delivery every other day or so, meaning 1 delivery from Shirley and 1 delivery from Oscar. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to be producing 21 bricks of meth per day on average in this single property. That's quite a lot. Meth is also one of the products that benefits quite highly from using only a single mix. So on the topic of mixing, I just finished doing a really big series of tests, spanning across different size mixers with different layouts and different chemist order assignments. And I've also done the math on every most profitable mix in each of those layouts that I created in my test. and that video will be coming out later this week. So make sure you subscribe if you want to check that one out, and like this video so more people can see it. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.